Zarathek guided her small ship through the empty space of the Epsilon sector. Her hands moved smoothly over the crystal controls, each touch making the panel glow with soft blue light. The ship was beautiful, like everything her people made. It was built from living crystal that grew into perfect shapes, stronger than metal but as clear as glass. She was a scout for the Veltaran fleet. Her job was simple: fly through dangerous areas and report what she found. Today she was checking the sector for enemy ships. The war with the Corvins had been going on for years, and both sides needed to know where their enemies were hiding. Zarathek looked at herself in the reflection of her control panel. Like all Veltarans, she was tall and thin, almost 7 feet high but weighing less than a human child. Her skin was made of tiny crystal pieces that fit together perfectly. Right now her skin was a calm blue color, which meant she felt peaceful. When Veltarans got scared or angry, their skin changed to red or orange. When they were happy, it turned bright green. The crystals in her skin were not just for show. They helped her body work like bones and blood vessels in other creatures. But they were also fragile. If too many crystals broke, a Veltaran would die. Her ship's warning system made a soft sound. 3 red dots appeared on her screen. Enemy ships were coming toward her fast. Corvin raiders, she said to herself. Her skin immediately changed from blue to yellow, the color of worry. The Corvins were everything the Veltarans were not. They were heavy and strong with thick skin like armor. They loved fighting and believed that only the strongest deserved to live. To them, the Veltarans were weak creatures that should be slaves or dead. Zarathek tried to turn her ship around and escape, but it was too late. The Corvin ships were much faster than her small scout vessel. They surrounded her in seconds. "Veltaran ship, stop your engines and prepare to be boarded," came a rough voice over the radio. The voice sounded like rocks grinding together. Zarathek's skin turned bright red. She was not going to surrender. Every Veltaran knew what happened to those captured by Corvins. The lucky ones died quickly. She pushed her ship's engines to maximum power and tried to escape. Her ship shot forward like an arrow, but the Corvins were ready. They fired their plasma cannons at her. The first blast missed, but it was so close that her ship shook. The second blast hit her left engine. Alarm started screaming as her beautiful crystal ship began to fall apart. Pieces of living crystal broke off and floated away like sparkling snow. "No, no, no," Zarathek cried, her skin now flashing between red and orange as panic took over. She tried to control her ship, but it was spinning out of control. More plasma blasts hit her ship, breaking more crystals and destroying her communication system. Through her cracked window, she could see a small moon below her. It was Zarion 7, a dead world that no one ever visited. The moon was covered in poison clouds and had ground that moved and shifted without warning. Even the Corvins usually stayed away from it. But now her ship was falling toward it, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. The Veltaran ship hit the surface of Zarion 7 like a meteor. It bounced once, twice, then slid across the rocky ground, leaving a long trail of broken crystal behind it. Finally, it crashed into a pile of rocks and stopped. Inside the ship, Zarathek was thrown around like a toy. When everything finally stopped moving, she was lying on the floor covered in her own glowing blood. The crystals in her arms and chest were cracked, and blue light was leaking out through the breaks. This was very bad. When a Veltaran lost too much crystal fluid, they died. She tried to stand up, but pain shot through her body. Several of the crystals in her legs were broken. She could walk, but it hurt terribly, and she was getting weaker every second. The air in her ship was getting thin. The crash had broken the life support system, and poisonous gases from Zarion 7 were leaking in. She had to get out, even though the air outside would be even worse. Zarathek dragged herself to the emergency exit. The door was stuck, but she managed to force it open. The air outside hit her like a wall. It burned her throat and made her eyes water, but her emergency suit filtered out the worst of the poison. She could hear the sound of ships landing nearby. The Corvins had followed her down to make sure she was dead. If they found her alive, they would either kill her immediately or take her prisoner. Both options were terrible. Moving as quietly as she could, Zarathek crawled away from her crashed ship. Every step sent new waves of pain through her body, and she left a trail of glowing blue drops behind her. She had to find somewhere to hide. The landscape of Zarion 7 was like a nightmare. The ground was covered with sharp rocks and deep cracks. Strange gases leaked out of holes in the earth, making the air shimmer with heat. In the distance, she could see mountains that glowed with their own light. Probably radioactive ore that would kill any living thing that got too close. She found a cluster of caves near the crash site. The opening was narrow, but she managed to squeeze inside. The cave was deeper than it looked, going back into the moon's rocky core. It was dark and cold, but it would hide her from the Corvins. From inside the cave, she could hear the enemy soldiers talking to each other. They had thick, growling voices that sounded like angry animals. "Search everything," one of them ordered. "Find the pilot. If she's alive, capture her. We can always use more slaves." "What if she's already dead?" asked another voice. "Then bring me her head as proof. The boss wants to know that every Velteran in this sector is eliminated." Zarathek pressed herself deeper into the cave, trying not to make any sound. Her skin had turned a dark purple color, the color of fear and despair. She was badly hurt, alone on a poisonous world, and being hunted by enemies who wanted her dead. She thought about her family back on the Velteran homeworld. They would never know what happened to her. Her name would just disappear from the records, another scout lost in the war. The crystal fluid continued to leak from her wounds, making small puddles of blue light on the cave floor. She was getting colder and weaker. Even if the Corvins didn't find her, she would probably die from her injuries within a few hours. Outside the cave, she could hear the sound of boots on rock as the Corvin soldiers searched for her. They were getting closer. Zarathek closed her eyes and tried to remember happier times. She thought about flying through the crystal gardens of her homeworld, where the trees grew like living jewels and sang soft music in the wind. She thought about her first solo flight, when her skin had turned the brightest green imaginable from pure joy. Now she would never see any of those beautiful things again. She would die alone in this dark cave, on a world where nothing good had ever grown. The footsteps outside were very close now. Soon the Corvins would find her and everything would be over. Marcus Chen was having a good day until his ship's scanner started beeping like crazy. He was drifting through space in his salvage vessel, the Persistence, looking for valuable scrap metal and abandoned equipment. Space was full of junk from old battles, and humans had gotten very good at finding useful things that other species threw away. Marcus was what other aliens called a scavenger, but he preferred the term recycling specialist. His ship was built tough and ugly, nothing like the beautiful vessels that other species made. It looked like someone had welded together a bunch of spare parts, which was exactly what humans had done. But it worked, and it could go places that prettier ships couldn't handle. The scanner showed debris falling toward Zarion 7. Most species avoided that moon like poison, which it basically was. The whole place was a death trap. Toxic air, unstable ground, and radiation that could cook you from the inside out. But Marcus had been there before. His ship had filters and shields that could handle almost anything. Because humans always assumed the worst was going to happen and prepared for it. "Looks like someone had a bad day," Marcus said to himself as he steered toward the moon. The debris pattern looked like a ship had been shot down. There were pieces of two different types of vessels. One looked Velteran, the other was definitely Corvin. Marcus knew about both species, though he had never met any of them personally. The Velterans were supposed to be very advanced but fragile, like living crystal statues. The Corvins were warriors who thought everyone else was weak and stupid. Neither group liked humans very much, but for different reasons. The Velterans thought humans were primitive and dangerous. The Corvins thought humans were weak and cowardly. Marcus found both opinions pretty funny, since humans seemed to be doing just fine in a galaxy that was supposedly too dangerous for them. As his ship entered Zarion 7's atmosphere, Marcus could see the crash sites. The Velteran ship had made a long furrow in the ground before smashing into some rocks. Not far away, 3 Corvin ships had landed intact. Their crews were probably looking for survivors to capture or kill. None of my business, Marcus told himself, but he was already scanning the area with his ship's sensors. The thermal imaging showed several Corvin soldiers moving around the crash site. There was also a faint heat signature in some caves nearby, something small and getting weaker. Marcus cursed under his breath. He knew he should just collect whatever salvage he could find and leave. Getting involved in alien wars was a good way to get himself killed. But the heat signature in the cave was fading fast, which meant someone was dying. He had been a medic in the human military before he became a salvage operator. Old habits were hard to break, and the first rule of being a medic was simple. If someone is hurt, you help them. It didn't matter who they were or what species they belonged to. Marcus landed his ship on the far side of a ridge, where the Corvins couldn't see it. He grabbed his medical kit and his sidearm, a simple projectile weapon that most aliens found crude but effective. Then he made his way toward the caves on foot. The air on Zarion 7 was terrible, but his suit's filters handled it without any problems. Human technology wasn't pretty, but it was reliable. While other species made elegant solutions that worked perfectly under ideal conditions, humans made ugly solutions that worked under any conditions. The Corvan soldiers were spread out around the crash site, searching methodically. Marcus counted 6 of them, all carrying heavy plasma weapons. They were big creatures, almost 8 feet tall and built like tanks. Their skin was thick and gray, and they moved with the confidence of professional killers. Marcus crept around them carefully. He had learned stealth techniques during his military service, and Corvans relied more on strength than awareness. It took him 20 minutes to reach the caves without being seen. Inside the cave, his flashlight revealed something that made him stop and stare. A Veltaran female was curled up against the far wall, barely conscious. She was the most alien thing Marcus had ever seen. Tall and thin, with skin that looked like it was made of blue crystal. But she was definitely hurt. Glowing blue fluid was leaking from cracks in her crystal skin, and her breathing was weak and fast. Marcus approached her slowly, not wanting to scare her. When his light hit her face, her eyes opened. They were large and completely blue, like looking into deep water. For a moment, they just stared at each other, the human and the alien both wondering what the other was going to do. "Hey there," Marcus said softly, even though he knew she probably couldn't understand him. "I'm here to help." The Veltaran tried to speak, but only managed a weak whisper in a language that sounded like wind chimes. Her skin was changing colors, from blue to purple to yellow. Marcus guessed this meant she was scared and confused. Very carefully, Marcus lifted her in his arms. She was surprisingly light, probably weighing less than 100 pounds despite being almost 7 feet tall. Her crystal skin felt warm and smooth, like polished stone. As he carried her toward the cave entrance, he could hear the Corvan soldiers getting closer. They were shouting to each other in their rough language, probably coordinating their search. Marcus had to get the injured alien back to his ship before they found the cave. The trip back was the longest 20 minutes of Marcus's life. He had to move slowly to avoid jarring the Veltaran's injuries, but he also had to stay hidden from the Corvan patrols. Twice he had to duck behind rocks and wait for soldiers to pass nearby. The alien drifted in and out of consciousness during the journey. Sometimes she would look up at him with those strange blue eyes, and he could see confusion and wonder in her expression. She had probably never seen a human before, just like he had never seen a Veltaran. When they finally reached the Persistence, Marcus carried her straight to his ship's small medical bay. It wasn't much, just a bed, some basic equipment, and a medical computer with databases on different species. He laid her down carefully and started scanning her injuries. The medical computer didn't have much information about Veltaran biology, but it was clear that she was in bad shape. The cracks in her crystal skin were like broken bones and severed arteries combined. She was losing the glowing blue fluid that seemed to serve as her blood, and her body temperature was dropping fast. Marcus studied the scan results and scratched his head. He was a pretty good medic, but this was completely outside his experience. How do you treat injuries to a person made of living crystal? He started with the basics, stopping the bleeding and stabilizing her vital signs. The blue fluid seemed to respond to electromagnetic fields, so he rigged up a device using parts from his ship's electrical systems. It wasn't pretty, but it slowed the leaking and seemed to help her breathe easier. While he worked, the Veltaran's eyes followed him around the room. Her skin was still changing colors, but it was mostly blue now, which seemed to be her default state. Marcus hoped that meant she was feeling better, or at least not getting worse. "Don't worry," he told her as he adjusted the makeshift medical device. "I don't know what I'm doing either, but we'll figure it out together." Outside his ship, Marcus could hear the sound of Corvan engines. They had probably finished searching the crash site and were expanding their search pattern. Soon they would find his ship, and then things would get complicated. The Veltaran tried to sit up, but Marcus gently pushed her back down. "Easy there," he said. "You're safe now. But we might have some company soon, and I need to figure out how to get us both out of here in one piece." The alien looked at him for a long moment, then reached out with one crystal hand and touched his arm. Her skin turned bright green, the first time he had seen that color. She said something in her musical language, and even though he couldn't understand the words, her tone was clear. She was saying thank you. Marcus stared at the readings on his scanner and felt his stomach drop. 8 Corvin warships had just entered Zirion 7's orbit, and they were spreading out to cover every possible escape route. His little salvage vessel was fast and tough, but it wasn't a match for military ships designed for killing. Well, this is just great, he muttered, running his hands through his hair. He looked over at the Veltaran female lying on his medical table. Her condition had improved slightly with his jury-rigged healing device, but she was still very weak. Moving her too much could kill her, but staying here definitely would. The ship's communication system crackled to life. A harsh Corvin voice filled the air, speaking in heavily accented Standard Galactic. Human vessel, this is War Commander Graktul of the Corvin 3rd Fleet. You will surrender immediately and prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will result in your immediate destruction. Marcus looked at the radio for a moment, then reached over and turned it off. He wasn't in the mood for conversation with alien bullies. The Veltaran's eyes had opened when the Corvin voice echoed through the ship. Her crystal skin flashed yellow and red. Colors that Marcus was learning meant fear and anger. She tried to sit up, and this time he helped her. Easy, Marcus said, supporting her with one arm. Can you understand me? To his surprise, she nodded weakly. Little, she said in a voice like wind through crystal caves. Learn. Your language. From captured signals. Great, what's your name? Zarathek, she managed, then pointed at him questioningly. Marcus Chen, he replied. Look, Zarathek, we're in a pretty bad situation here. Those Corvin ships have us completely surrounded. Any ideas? Zarathek struggled to focus her large blue eyes on him. You should leave me. Save yourself. Corvins want me. Not you, Marcus snorted. Yeah, that's not happening. Nobody gets left behind, especially not someone I just spent an hour patching up. Her skin turned a confused purple color. Why, I am a stranger, different species. Your people barely know mine exist. Doesn't matter, Marcus said, checking his ship's systems. You were hurt and needed help. That's all I need to know. Zarathek stared at him like he was speaking a foreign language. To her, he probably was. The idea of risking everything for a stranger from another species didn't make sense to most galactic civilizations. They helped their own kind, their allies, people who could help them in return. Humans seemed to help anyone who needed it, which other species found either admirable or insane. Tell me about those ships up there, Marcus said, pulling up tactical displays. What are we dealing with? Corvin Battle Group, Zarathek said, her voice getting stronger as his medical device continued to work. 3 heavy cruisers, 5 destroyers, all armed with plasma cannons and guided missiles. Your ship is completely outgunned, yeah, I figured that out. Marcus studied the scanner readings. But they can't stay here forever. This moon is unstable. Too much radiation and seismic activity for long-term operations. They do not need long-term, Zarathek said sadly. They will scan for life signs and destroy anything that moves. Standard Corvin tactics. Marcus was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then he started to smile, which apparently looked terrifying to Veltarans because Zarathek's skin turned pale blue. What if we don't run? He asked. Excuse me? Running is what they expect. But what if we stayed and fought instead? Zarathek's skin cycled through several colors before settling on bright orange. Marcus Chen, that is impossible. We have 1 small ship against 8 warships. It would be suicide. Maybe, Marcus admitted. But humans have gotten pretty good at impossible things. And besides, we don't have to fight them directly. We just have to make them go away. He pulled up geological surveys of Zirion 7 on his computer. The moon was a disaster waiting to happen. The core was unstable, the crust was full of cracks, and the whole thing was held together by not much more than luck and gravity. Look at this, Marcus said, pointing to the readings. The subsurface is loaded with unstable isotopes and pressurized gas pockets. This whole moon is like a bomb that hasn't gone off yet. Yes, Zarathek agreed. That is why no one builds permanent bases here. Too dangerous. Dangerous for someone trying to live here, sure, but perfect for someone trying to blow something up. Marcus started pulling up schematics of his ship's mining equipment. The Persistence wasn't just a salvage vessel. It was also equipped with industrial tools for cutting apart large pieces of debris. Plasma cutters, seismic charges, and a drilling array that could bore through solid rock. If I can get to the right spots on the surface, Marcus explained, I can trigger a chain reaction. Turn this whole moon into one giant fragmentation grenade. Zarathek's eyes went very wide. That would destroy the Corvin fleet. And us as well. Not necessarily. The reaction would take about 10 minutes to build up to critical mass. If we time it right, we can trigger the charges and then get out before things get really interesting. The probability of success is terrible, I know, Marcus interrupted. But it's better than just sitting here waiting to die. And hey, worst case scenario, we take a bunch of Corvins with us. Zarathek was quiet for a long time, her skin shifting through various colors. Finally, it settled on a determined red. What do you need me to do? Marcus grinned, that terrifying human expression again. First, you're going to help me turn my mining equipment into bombs. Then you're going to use your superior intellect to calculate exactly where to place them for maximum effect. And after that, we're going to give those Corvin bullies the worst day of their lives. For the next 3 hours, Marcus and Zarathek worked together to prepare their impossible plan. She provided the scientific knowledge and precise calculations, while he provided the mechanical skills and what she was beginning to recognize as typically human stubbornness. Marcus modified his seismic charges to create controlled explosions at key geological stress points. Zarathek calculated the exact timing needed to create a cascading failure in the moon's structure. Together, they plotted a course that would let them plant all the charges and still have a slim chance of escaping before the fireworks started. This plan has 17 critical failure points, Zarathek observed as they made final preparations. Only 17. That's not too bad for a human plan, Marcus replied, loading the modified charges into his ship's deployment system. How do your people survive with such attitudes toward risk assessment? Marcus thought about that for a moment. We don't really think of them as risks, he said finally. We think of them as problems to solve. And there's always a solution if you're creative enough and stubborn enough to find it. Even when the solution involves blowing up a moon, especially when it involves blowing up a moon. The Corvin ships were still maintaining their blockade when Marcus piloted the Persistence out of its hiding spot. Immediately, his communication system lit up with demands to surrender. Human vessel, you will stop and prepare to be boarded immediately, came the same harsh voice from before. This time, Marcus picked up the radio. War Commander Gractul, this is Captain Marcus Chen of the vessel Persistence. I've got a counter-proposal for you. You are in no position to make proposals, human. Maybe not, Marcus agreed, but here it is anyway. You've got about 8 minutes to get your ships away from this moon before very bad things start happening. There was a pause. Explain. Marcus looked over at Zarathek, who nodded encouragingly. Her skin was bright green now, apparently the color of excitement and anticipation. Let's just say that Zerion 7 is about to have some seismic activity, Marcus said, the kind that turns moons into asteroid fields. You are bluffing, am I? Check your sensors in about 30 seconds. Marcus had timed the first charge to go off right at that moment. Deep beneath the surface of Zerion 7, the modified mining explosive detonated in a pocket of compressed gas. The explosion wasn't big by itself, but it started a chain reaction that sent shockwaves racing through the moon's unstable crust. Seismic activity detected, came a different Corvin voice over the radio. Magnitude 7.2 and increasing. That's just the opening act, Marcus announced cheerfully. The main event starts in 7 minutes. I'd suggest you clear the area. This is impossible, Gractul growled. Humans do not have such capabilities. Funny thing about humans, Marcus replied as he triggered the second and third charges. We have a talent for doing impossible things. The Corvin fleet was starting to panic, and Marcus could hear it in their radio chatter. He had tapped into their communications frequency, and even though he couldn't understand their language, the tone was clear. The professional confidence was gone, replaced by fear and confusion. Magnitude 8.7, reported a Corvin sensor operator. The entire crustal structure is becoming unstable. How is this possible? Demanded War Commander Gractul. Humans don't have planet-killing weapons. Marcus triggered another set of charges, and Zerion 7 shuddered like a sick animal. Through his ship's viewports, he could see cracks spreading across the moon's surface, with bright orange lava beginning to seep through the breaks. We don't need planet-killing weapons when the planet wants to kill itself, Marcus said into his radio. We just give it a little encouragement. Beside him, Zarathek was monitoring the geological readings with growing excitement. Her crystal skin had turned a brilliant green color that Marcus had never seen before. The cascade reaction is proceeding exactly as calculated, she reported. Core pressure is increasing at optimal rates. You were correct, this moon wanted to explode. It just needed someone to show it how. How much time do we have? Marcus asked, steering his ship toward the final charge placement point. 4 minutes and 30 seconds until critical mass, Zarathek replied. After that, the moon will break apart completely. And how long to get to minimum safe distance? At our ship's maximum velocity, approximately 4 minutes and 45 seconds. Marcus did the math in his head and grinned. 15 seconds to spare. I love it when a plan comes together. That is an extremely narrow margin for error, Zarathek pointed out. Hey, 15 seconds is practically an eternity. I've cut things a lot closer than that. The Corvin ships were finally starting to move. The 3 heavy cruisers were powering up their engines and pulling back from the moon, but the smaller destroyers were holding position. Marcus could guess why. They were trying to make sure he didn't escape before the moon exploded and killed him. Graktul, you might want to tell your destroyer captains to back off, Marcus suggested over the radio. When this thing goes up, the debris field is going to be pretty extensive. Human, you will die along with us if this moon explodes, the Corvin commander replied. Maybe, but that's a chance I'm willing to take. The question is, are you? Marcus reached the final charge point and deployed the last of his modified mining explosives. This one was the biggest, a shaped charge designed to crack the moon's core like an egg. Once it went off, there would be no stopping the chain reaction. Final charge deployed, he announced. Everybody better buckle up. He slammed his ship's engines to full power and began the desperate race away from Zirion 7. The Persistence wasn't built for speed, but human engineers had learned to overbuild everything. The fusion drive roared to life, pushing the ship faster than it was designed to go. Behind them, the moon was coming apart. The surface was cracking like broken glass, with massive chunks of rock flying off into space. Geysers of superheated gas shot up from the core, creating a spectacular light show that could probably be seen from orbit around the nearest star. 2 of the Corvin destroyers had finally gotten the message and were retreating at full speed. But 3 ships were still trying to intercept Marcus, apparently believing they could capture him and then outrun the explosion. Idiots, Marcus muttered, checking his rear sensors. The Corvin ships were gaining on him, but they were also flying directly into the expanding debris field. Marcus, Zarathek said, her voice tight with concentration. The explosion will begin in 90 seconds. I know, Marcus replied, making a sharp turn to avoid a chunk of flying rock the size of a building. Just hold on. One of the pursuing Corvin destroyers was hit by a piece of debris and began spinning out of control. Its captain tried to regain control, but another impact sent the ship careening into Zirion 7's surface, just as the core explosion began. The moon didn't just explode. It disintegrated. The chain reaction that Marcus had started spread through the entire structure in a matter of seconds, turning solid rock into expanding clouds of superheated gas and molten fragments. The blast was so bright that Marcus had to dim his viewports to avoid being blinded. The shockwave hit his ship like a giant fist, sending the Persistence tumbling end over end. Alarms screamed as systems overloaded and circuit breakers popped throughout the ship. In the medical bay, Zarathek was thrown against her restraints, her crystal skin flashing red with pain. Sorry about the rough ride, Marcus shouted over the noise, fighting to regain control of his ship. Human engineering wasn't built for comfort, but it was built to survive. While prettier ships might have been torn apart by the blast, the Persistence held together through sheer stubborn toughness. Marcus managed to stabilize their tumbling and restart the engines just as the main debris wave reached them. Flying through an exploding moon was like navigating through hell. Chunks of rock the size of asteroids flew past them at incredible speeds. Some pieces were still glowing hot from the explosion, turning space around them into a deadly light show. Marcus had to use every trick he had learned as a salvage pilot, threading his ship through gaps that seemed impossibly small. The 2 remaining Corvin destroyers weren't so lucky. They had been designed for space combat, not obstacle course flying. The first one was smashed by a piece of debris that punched right through its hull. The second one managed to avoid the largest chunks but was pelted by smaller fragments that gradually tore its armor apart. Warning: major debris approaching from starboard, Zarathek called out, reading the sensors. Marcus looked and saw a mountain-sized chunk of Zirion 7's core spinning toward them. It was moving too fast to avoid and too big to go around. Hold on, Marcus said, and did something that would have horrified any sane pilot. Instead of trying to avoid the debris, he flew straight at it. Marcus, what are you doing? Zarathek demanded. Something stupid, Marcus admitted, but it might just work. The mountain of rock was rotating as it flew through space. Marcus watched its motion carefully, calculating angles and timing in his head. At the last possible second, he fired his engines and slipped the Persistence through a gap between two peaks of the spinning debris. They missed being crushed by less than 50 meters. Impossible, Zarathek breathed. No one has reflexes that fast. Sure they do, Marcus said, sweat dripping down his face. You just have to be really, really motivated. They cleared the main debris field with their hull intact and their engines still running. Behind them, the remains of Zirion 7 continued to expand into space like a deadly flower. The Corvin fleet was in full retreat, those ships that had survived racing away as fast as their engines could carry them. "This is War Commander Graktul to all ships," came a transmission on the emergency frequency. "Retreat to Rally Point 7. Repeat, all ships retreat immediately." "Leaving so soon?" Marcus asked over the radio. "But the party's just getting started." There was a long pause before Graktul responded. "Human, what you have done here is impossible. Your species possesses weapons beyond our understanding." "Actually," Marcus said, checking his ship's systems, "we didn't use any weapons at all. Just some mining equipment and a little bit of creative thinking. That is not possible." "Funny thing about humans," Marcus replied. "We specialize in impossible things." Zarathek was staring at the tactical display where the scattered Corvin fleet was jumping to hyperspace as quickly as possible. Her skin was cycling through colors Marcus had never seen before, deep purples and bright golds that seemed to indicate amazement mixed with disbelief. "You destroyed an entire Corvin battle group," she said quietly. "With mining equipment." "Well, you helped," Marcus pointed out. "I couldn't have calculated those charge placements without you. But the concept, the execution... Marcus, do you understand what you have done? War Commander Graktul is one of the Corvin Empire's most experienced officers. He has conquered dozens of worlds, and you made him run away from a human salvage operator." Marcus shrugged, beginning to plot a course toward Veltaran space. "Everybody runs when someone starts blowing up moons. It's just common sense." "Common sense," Zarathek repeated, her skin settling into a warm golden color. "Yes, I suppose it is. But somehow I doubt many people would have thought of it." "Maybe not," Marcus agreed. "But that's the thing about humans. We're really good at thinking of things that other people wouldn't, usually because other people are too smart to try such crazy ideas." Zarathek was quiet for a moment, processing everything that had happened. Finally she spoke. "Marcus Chen, I believe my people need to learn more about humans, yeah?" Marcus said, making final course corrections. "Well, you're welcome to stick around and observe. Just don't expect things to get any less crazy." Zarathek's skin turned bright green, the color of joy and anticipation. "I would not have it any other way." The Veltaran patrol ships found them 3 days later, drifting through space at the edge of their territory. Marcus had sent out a distress signal using Zarathek's personal identification codes, but he wasn't sure what kind of reception they would get. Humans and Veltarans had never been enemies, but they weren't exactly friends either. The lead patrol ship was a thing of beauty, like everything the Veltarans built. It was made from living crystal that grew in perfect geometric patterns, and it moved through space like a dancer. Compared to Marcus's battered salvage vessel, it looked like a piece of art. "Veltaran patrol ship to unknown vessel," came a musical voice over the radio. "Identify yourself and state your business in our territory." "This is Marcus Chen aboard the human vessel Persistence," Marcus replied. "I'm carrying one of your people, Scout Zarathek. She's injured and needs medical attention." There was a long pause. "Stand by for boarding," the patrol ship finally responded. 20 minutes later, Marcus found himself facing 3 tall Veltaran officers in his ship's small cargo bay. They were all beautiful in that alien way, with crystal skin that reflected light like living jewels, but their colors were cold. Blues and purples that Zarathek had taught him meant suspicion and distrust. The leader was a female with skin like sapphire. She wore what looked like a uniform made from woven light, and she studied Marcus like he was something unpleasant she had found on her shoe. "I am Captain Velandra of the patrol vessel Crystal Wind," she announced. "Where is Scout Zarathek?" "In the medical bay," Marcus said. "She's stable now, but she was pretty badly hurt when I found her." "Found her where?" asked one of the other officers, a male with emerald green skin. "On Zirion 7. Her ship was shot down by Corvin raiders," All three Veltarans immediately turned bright orange, the color of shock. Captain Valandra's voice rose in pitch. Zarion 7? That is impossible. No one survives on that world. The environment is completely hostile. Yeah, it's pretty nasty, Marcus agreed. But my ship is built to handle rough environments. We humans tend to assume the worst and prepare for it. You went to Zarion 7 to rescue a stranger? The Emerald officer asked. A member of a species you have never even met? Marcus shrugged. She was hurt and needed help. Seemed like the thing to do. The three officers looked at each other, their skin colors shifting through various shades of confusion. Finally, Captain Valandra spoke. We must see her immediately. Marcus led them to the medical bay where Zarathek was sitting up in bed, looking much better than she had 3 days ago. Her crystal skin had healed enough to stop the glowing leaks, and her color was a healthy blue-green. Captain Valandra, Zarathek said, her skin flashing a respectful yellow. It is good to see you. Scout Zarathek, we received reports that your ship was lost in the Epsilon sector. How did you come to be aboard this human vessel? Zarathek looked at Marcus, then back at her superior officer. Captain Chen saved my life, not just from the Corvins, but from Zarion 7 itself. He treated my injuries using equipment he built from spare parts, and then she paused, her skin cycling through several colors as she tried to find words. Captain, he destroyed an entire Corvin battle group, 8 warships, including 3 heavy cruisers. He turned Zarion 7 into a weapon and used it to drive them off. The 3 officers turned white, a color Marcus had never seen before on Veltaran skin. That is impossible, the Emerald officer whispered. Humans don't have that kind of military capability. He did not use military weapons, Zarathek explained. He used mining equipment and his understanding of geology. He triggered a chain reaction that destroyed the moon and created a debris field that the Corvins could not navigate. Captain Valandra stared at Marcus. You destroyed a moon? Well, technically the moon destroyed itself, Marcus corrected. I just gave it a little push in the right direction. A little push, the captain repeated faintly. The thing was unstable anyway, Marcus explained. Bad geology, unstable core, toxic atmosphere. It was an accident waiting to happen. I just made sure it happened when it would do some good. Zarathek's skin turned bright green as she continued her report. Captain, I have learned much about humans during my time aboard this ship. They are not the primitive creatures our intelligence reports suggested. They are remarkable. In what way? Valandra asked, though she sounded like she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. They approach problems differently than we do, Zarathek explained. Where we calculate optimal solutions, they create functional solutions. Where we seek perfection, they seek effectiveness, and they never abandon their own, even when their own includes total strangers from alien species. Marcus felt uncomfortable being talked about like he wasn't in the room. Look, I just did what anyone would do. Someone was hurt, so I helped them. Someone was threatening us, so I stopped them. It's not that complicated. Anyone would do this? The Emerald officer asked. Risk their life for a stranger? Destroy a moon to protect someone they had never met? Well, Marcus said, thinking about it, maybe not everyone. But most humans would, yeah. It's what people do. You help each other out. The Veltaran officers exchanged looks, their skin colors shifting through patterns that Marcus couldn't interpret. Finally, Captain Valandra spoke. Captain Chen, we must escort you to our capital world. The High Council will want to speak with you. Am I in trouble? Marcus asked. On the contrary, Valandra replied, her skin turning a warm gold color. You may have prevented a war. The trip to the Veltaran capital took 2 days. Marcus spent most of the time talking with Zarathek, learning more about her people and teaching her about humans. She was fascinated by human culture, especially their tendency to help others regardless of personal cost. It makes no evolutionary sense, she observed, as they watched the crystal cities of the Veltaran homeworld grow larger on the view screen. Altruism toward strangers provides no survival advantage. Maybe not, Marcus agreed, but it makes life more interesting. Besides, you never know when that stranger might turn out to be useful later. Is that why you rescued me? Because I might be useful? Marcus looked at her, surprised. No, I rescued you because you needed rescuing. Everything else is just a bonus. Zarathek's skin turned that bright green color again, the one that meant joy and amazement. The Veltaran High Council met in a building. that looked like it had been grown from a single enormous crystal. The council members were ancient beings whose skin had taken on complex patterns that spoke of centuries of experience. They listened to Zarathek's report with growing amazement. When she finished, the eldest council member, whose skin was a deep purple shot through with veins of gold, spoke in a voice like distant music. "Captain Chen, we have underestimated your species. We thought humans were primitive and chaotic. We see now that you are something far more dangerous." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Dangerous? You are unpredictable," the elder explained. "You make the impossible seem routine. You turn disasters into opportunities, and you inspire loyalty in beings you have just met. These are the qualities of a species that changes the galaxy." "We just try to get by," Marcus said, "same as everyone else." "No," said another council member, her skin shifting through rainbow patterns. "Not the same as everyone else. The Corvins conquer through strength. We Velterons survive through intelligence and technology. But you humans, you thrive through pure stubbornness and creativity. And kindness," Zarathek added. "Do not forget kindness." The eldest council member nodded slowly. "Indeed. We propose a formal alliance between our species, Captain Chen. Your people have much to teach us." Marcus scratched his head. "I'm just a salvage operator. I don't really speak for humanity." "Perhaps not," the elder replied, "but you represent them well. Will you carry our proposal to your government?" "Sure," Marcus said. "But I should warn you, humans can be pretty weird once you get to know us." Zarathek's skin turned bright green. "Captain Velandra, I request assignment as a liaison to the human species. I believe I have much more to learn from them." "Granted," Velandra replied, "though I suspect you will find the experience challenging." 2 weeks later, Marcus was back in space aboard the Persistence with Zarathek as his official passenger and unofficial partner. She had adapted to human life surprisingly well, though she still couldn't understand why humans insisted on drinking something as dangerous as coffee. "So what do we do now?" she asked as they cruised through an asteroid field looking for salvage. "Same thing we always do," Marcus replied, steering around a chunk of twisted metal. "Look for things that other people have lost, help anyone who needs help, and try not to blow up any more moons unless we absolutely have to." "And this is a typical human life?" Marcus grinned, that expression that had once terrified her but now made her skin turn happy green. "Trust me. Zarathek, we're just getting started." Behind them, the Veltaran homeworld grew smaller in the distance. But its people would never forget the human who had shown them that sometimes the best solutions came from the most unexpected places. And throughout the galaxy, word was spreading about the species that turned salvage operators into heroes and made the impossible look easy. Humans, it seemed, were going to be very interesting neighbors indeed.